Welcome to Off Panel. Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and it's the most wonderful time of the year. Brandon, I'm singing for you. The reason for that is Brandon Burpee is on the show, and it's time for us to do our year in review show. Woo!
Woo! How many years is this now?
Oh, man. 7 years in a row we've done some level of a year in review show. But are you ready for it, Brandon?
Oh, dude, I am beyond ready. The year in review show is by far and above my favorite episode every year for 7 years, as you're saying it. So I was stoked for this. I spend all year trying to figure out a way to prioritize my list in preparation for tonight. So
we've definitely done it a lot of different ways. I mean, if you guys had never seen, you probably haven't seen our YouTube show we used to do, Four Color News and Brews. But we would. I actually, one thing I really liked, I liked our awards format back when we would have random awards that we had to randomly pick stuff for. Well, not randomly, but select things for. I thought that was pretty crazy, especially because we would always randomize it because we were drunk and we didn't care about our format.
Dress up.
Yeah, dress up, exactly, suit up for it, drink some champagne during it. But at the same time, I feel like this formula works for the audio podcast, but just for the listeners, we're going to do a top 20. We're going to break down our top 20 individual series of the year. That's going to be at the end of the show, but to kick it off, I wanted to talk about, it was a big year of comics. It was a crazy year of comics. There's all kind of rebirths and more Marvel nows, and there's crazy shit going on everywhere. But to start things off with, I wanted to ask Brandon, what kind of year was it for you? Was it a good year? Was it a bad year? What's your take?
It was an all-new rebirth kind of year for me. Last year, I was pretty down on the big two. I think I definitely still had some picks in there, but overall, it felt like a massive downturn of a year for me. I just wasn't finding interest in a lot of what they were doing. They were deviating ways away from some of the characters I really enjoyed, and it kind of took a lot of the enjoyability out of it. But this year, I feel like both companies got more on track than they have been in the past, and in some ways, in very big ways, as far as my reading tastes are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
How about yourself?
Well, I'm kind of two minds because partially, okay, there's two things. For me, it was a down year. And the reason for that is twofold. One, it's on me because I switched to trades on a lot of stuff. Yeah. And because I just, it kind of was starting to feel more like a grind. I was buying all these books and they were stacking up and everything like that. And I was like, I actually do enjoy reading some books in trades. And I really enjoy reading books on Marvel Unlimited. And so what I did was at a certain point, right when I actually stopped Sketched, I decided that I was going to switch to trades on everything that I wasn't double digit issues into already. And besides a few select books, which I may or may not get to later on. So part of that's on me because it's kind of made my reading habits really, really weird. And you know how sometimes, well, I'm gonna have some retailers that are gonna listen to this and gonna be like, I hate David, I hate him, he's horrible. Because I had a retailer on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and he was like, trade waiters are people who basically get books canceled, and he's not entirely wrong. But at the same time, I think part of it, one thing that really stood out to me this year is Marvel and DC suck at trades. Really.
Oh, really?
Well, okay, so here's a good example.
Other than the expensive Marvel ones, my retailer has pointed out the expense of the Marvel ones to me a few times. List.
Yeah, those are crazy expensive, and they come out in hardcover for a lot of them first, so it's $25 for you to buy the first volume of the Mighty Thor, and I'm just like, I'd rather just wait for trade paperback. Anyways, but no, so here's an example. The Flash for Rebirth is on issue 11 now or something like that, and its first
11 or 12, yeah.
Yeah, its first trade doesn't come out until February.
What?
Yeah. And the Flintstones, which is on issue 6 as of tomorrow, no, 2 days, this week for releases, the Flintstones first trade doesn't come out until March 22nd. And
Are they just doing like 12 issue trades, or are they doing six and are just
that one's gonna be 6 issues, and like, okay, that's like the extra 3 month gap. That's kind of a usual length, but at the same time, I'm a big subscriber to thinking that images structure is the smartest way. Do the
by
arc,
far?
and then like the next month you come out with the trade, and then you get back to the book and everything like that. And it just kind of seems to me that it's like, for a book like the Flintstones, where everybody's talking, or a lot of people are talking about it because it's this crazy political satire book that is the Flintstones.
Mm-hmm.
It seems crazy to me that I can't buy it unless I buy it in single issues for another 4 months.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So,
Like, especially in the digital age where people want it immediately, you
right.
should be trying to get it in somebody's hands immediately.
Yeah. So it seems really weird. It's like I want to read all these books, but unless I buy single issues, like my trade habits, it's like I'm almost gonna have to reassess how I'm buying comics, because the trade thing just isn't working. Like, if I wanted to,
Very interesting.
yeah, it's been really odd seeing that, and it's mostly Marvel and DC, to be totally honest. Like,
Yeah.
I really like to catch up with Rebirth. Like, I want to read Tom King and Mikhail Janin and David Finch on Batman, but the first trade doesn't come out until my birthday in January, and that just seems bonkers to me. I don't know. I like, maybe other people are totally fine with it, but it just kind of seems like in 2016, when a lot of people binge watch everything, it seems weird that we can't binge read comics.
Yeah, I agree. And also another thing that, like, you're touching on how Image does it right. Another thing they do so much right on, including Valiant. I think Valiant used to do this, and I don't know if they still do, but putting out the initial trades for like $9.99.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like, that's so smart. Like, in Marvel and DC, where they're trying to like change up their lineups on like an every 6 month basis anymore, if you're really trying to gain traction, make these things really easy to get real quick and cheap.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the weird thing is, okay, and we've sung the praises of Marvel Unlimited like a million times.
Love it.
It's awesome, but here's the crazy thing: like, the trade for most of their books comes out about the same time the issues start dropping on Marvel Unlimited, and I'm just like, why don't I just read them on Marvel Unlimited? It's $9.99 and I get all of them.
Yeah, everything. Like, I've been reading, like, this has been an ongoing thing for years, just reading through the entire run of X-Men, all the little side titles and everything. Dude, I had just been blowing through it thanks to Marvel Unlimited. Like, I love that app so much.
Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, so like partially I blame it on myself, because my reading habits have changed, and like, I'm reading less, and it just kind of feels like there's a hole in my readership, because I'm not reading nearly as much Marvel and DC as I used to, because their trade habits are crazy. But at the same time, I also kind of feel like in 2016 that shouldn't be a place we're at,
Yeah. I would wholeheartedly agree.
So what things really excited you about this year? Like, I don't want to get into specific comics unless there's the one we talked about beforehand, because we don't want to reveal anything that's on our list. But what really got you hyped this year?
I got hyped by a variety of things this year. There were a few titles that were rebranded or reteamed or whatever might have happened, that the new directions really piqued my interest. There were some like Image books this year that really flexed muscle for me. I mean, there's been years in the past, like Image and I fluctuate. Sometimes they put out a bunch of crime noir books that I'm not really like super big on the genre. And then I'm kind of out for a little while. And then sometimes they come out with all these crazy like sci-fi books and I'm totally in. And this is one of those years where everything, well, not everything they were producing, obviously, because it's only 20 titles on this list, but a lot of what they put out this year just really, really, really appealed to me. And so it was fun because there was just so many. I felt like this is the first time in a long time multiple publishers were putting out amazing books, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, not to spoil our list, I don't think this really will. You said you have 5 publishers on your top 20. I have 7, depending on how you count, and that's great. I mean, like, I don't want to put baby in a corner, Brandon, but you tend to be more of a Marvel and DC guy, so 5 publishers is big for you.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think in years past, like, I hit maybe like 3 or 4. No, usually 4, because for a longest stretch there was like Turtles. Yeah. And, always something from Image, at least one book. So usually I'd hit 4, but 5 is a step up, and it's not like all like Marvel, DC, Image.
Sure.
It's a lot of the same hitters, honestly, and one additional publisher. But for me, it was cool because there was stuff in here that was, even at the big 2, were intellectually great and told compelling stories. And it wasn't just like throwaway shit that's going to be gone in 6 months. Like, it was impactful in the moment. But yeah, so overall, I thought across the board, diversity in comics as far as publishers and what they're putting out was amazing this year.
Can I tell you the thing that excites me the most about this year?
Hmm.
It's I think if you gave me, I don't know, 100 different variations to choose, if I was able to make it like a prediction for my 10 favorite comics this upcoming year back in like December of last year, I don't think I would have gotten anywhere close to it. Like my top 10 is so different than I would have even expected before I started. I mean, it was roughly what it was, but like, just to throw out some names of books that didn't make my list, like Lazarus is always like a top 5 book for me. That doesn't even make my top 20 this year. Like there's several books with Image that I would normally like just lock in there, but like I kind of feel the depth of comics is really, really great right now. But I kind of feel like I'm missing that, like some of the more like iconic big two books that I would normally throw at the top.
Yeah, this year I'm looking at my list. I mean, you know me, I'm terrible about remembering stuff. But looking at this list, I don't think there's a single book in my top 10 that was in my top 10 list last year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like not a single one. Like
I think
it
that's
was
great.
And last year I struggled. Like I don't think we did a top 20 last year.
We did.
I could be wrong. We did? Okay.
Yeah.
I know toward the end, I think I might have commented on this last time. Like, by the end, I was like, I don't even know what else I want to put on here. Like, last year was such a down year for me. This year, I was like, oh, dude, I could fit like 5 or 6 more on here.
Yeah.
And that's always a good year.
Yeah, no, I actually had to cut some of my top 20, and I was like rereading issues just for the explicit purpose of figuring out which one would work. And that's an awesome thing. I love the fact that we're actually having to like have a little bit more depth to it, as opposed to years past where we have to maybe even struggle for it. But hey, come on, this is your time. What is the book that's not making your list that you really want to talk about?
Oh man, so the book, my favorite title this year by far was DC Universe Rebirth. I love that book. It doesn't make my top 20 because it's a single issue, and that doesn't make any sense for top series. But it just, I was really disillusioned with DC, and I like a lot of their characters, and this book just jump-started it for me. I thought the art was great. I thought the story was cool. I loved the stuff with Kid Flash and Flash. Like that just felt really strong and emotional. And I felt like it totally embodied all of the DC fans that were like, oh, we just want you to remember us, come back to us. And then finally, as Wally, the comic book community that likes the DC universe pre-52 more, was like, oh, yes, we're acknowledged. We're reality now. And then slowly they've been introducing a lot of stuff that was forgotten, which has been great.
Mm-hmm. One thing I really liked the other day is, this has nothing to do with Rebirth, but there was like, I guess some screenshot or something from like a DC video that they had that like Dan Didio was in, and there was like one of those whiteboards behind them, and it had like some random stuff about Snyder and Capullo and like their next year event and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh my god, DC's even doing that stuff where they have like the random like remember in New 52 exactly,
yeah,
when they had like the chalkboard in freaking Rip Hunter's office or lair or whatever you'd call it. And I remember like reading that and being like, what does it mean? Oh my god. I'm like, they got whiteboards now, like they're going all tech. Maybe they should have like an iPad that we can analyze or something. But anyways, I saw that and I was just like, man, I actually do kind of feel like DC's kind of got their like groove back to a certain degree. And I will say that as a person who is again frustrated about the fact Rebirth is like taking forever to be released in trade. But here's a couple things. How cool is it that you may not love their stuff, but how cool is it that Young Animal's a thing? Like, I think that's amazing.
Right.
They're doing like a Flintstones book and like a Future Quest book and all this other stuff that's supposed to be just straight crazy whack city out of a Flintstones book.
I read the first 2 issues of that Flintstones book, and it was nutty putty, dude. It was crazy.
But I mean, like, that's cool. I like the fact that they're taking risks even on like licensed books. And then like, Vertigo's kind of, I don't know. I mean, Vertigo, I'm not really crazy about their output, but they're still doing Vertigo stuff. So that's more than what it could have been, which I would not have been surprised if like Vertigo was dead by now, just because it's kind of hard to compete in a market that's dominated by Image when it comes to creator owned.
Especially when you're Vertigo and they put out a sweet new label with sweet new titles that appeal very greatly, and you're kind of like all of a sudden the secondhand child,
Yeah. So I'm curious, like we talked about the things we liked. Was there anything that stands out to you as particularly frustrating or lame about 2016 in comics?
Man, I would say for me, the frustration is when you look at the big two, I think the product is getting better. But you're seeing a lot of recycling of older talent, and you're not seeing like an influx of new up and coming talent, which is worrisome because things start to get really stagnant, and then you start playing musical chairs. And then, you know, you end up in, you know, Dark Rain. And so like, that kind of thing worries me. And I think in some parts, some of these companies have done a good job of getting new talent on, but I think image is such a draw for some people that they're just like, no, I got no interest in doing that. So you lose like a huge section of your talent. It's just exclusively to themselves. Which is greatly beneficial in some ways. But as somebody who likes, you know, big two characters, I'd like to see some of these guys come back and do some stuff. But so that's probably my most frustrating thing is just I feel like independent books are getting so much stronger, and Marvel and DC are doing well, but could be stronger if they were able to incentivize like working for them with some of these newer young talents that have just letting them go elsewhere.
Yeah, I would like to see a little bit more risk taking because it's like, you know, I like Mark Waid a lot. I'm not going to say that I don't. But at the same time, I would love to see somebody like Bonkers take over like the Avengers or something like that. Somebody surprising. I'm not saying that they have to like go and get like, I don't know, some independent like Peter Baggy type creator or something like that. But get somebody that's a little bit outside the box. Somebody that
I want Ryan Brown on something. Like every time we do a draft, I put Ryan Brown on some kind of comedic book. He needs to be on a Marvel or DC book. Like it's just how do you make a book called Slapstick that nobody wants to read and make people want to read it? I'd put Ryan Brown on it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm super biased because I love his shit because he's just I think we share similar over the top, ridiculous dick and fart joke humor. But
you just need to start a comic publisher so you can start hiring him.
I'm serious. I'd be in, bro. If you need an agent, hit me up. I'll talk to you for days.
I do think that one, like, you know, a good example where you're talking about when it comes to recycling talent is like for both of us, we would have been, if you'd asked us like 3 weeks ago, the top of our list for things we'd be excited about in 2017 is like the X-Men post-resurrection stuff. And now I know you're higher on it than I am, but I know you're not super stoked on those books. And a lot of it is because it doesn't really feel like we kind of got the A-list rollout that we were expecting, I guess.
No, and also like it makes me honestly when announcements like this come down, it makes me miss Quizada. Like I'm not gonna lie. Because I feel like post-quiz is hype and then it never seems to pay off. Like it's never as good, and they do it in such a way that like with the stuff they put out for X-Men, like you were just talking about, like they put out all this stuff that really hits a nostalgic vibe, almost like they're trying to say, hey, look, we got this rebirth kind of thing going for your X-Men here. And there's a lot of X-Men fans, they're disillusioned who are like, ooh, yes. And then you go and you put like not very many established X-Men on teams, you know, and people are like, wait a minute, you bait and switched us. That's bullshit. I'm tired of that.
Yeah. And
that's kind of where I'm getting with a lot of their advertisements as they come out. And then I'm like, I don't even think anything is going to be like you said it was going to be. And then it's not.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing is like the concept of like the blue and gold and all that whole line of books seemed much more appealing until we actually got the details to it. And then you're just like, this just kind of seems the same-ish.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it takes a lot for you to turn on the 05, and you're turning on the 05 to a certain degree now.
Well, I was strongly with them initially, and like back before it was proved that I was correct, like leading into all the Infinity stuff and all that, where I thought something was happening with like time and space. I always thought like a logical conclusion for them would be once that was wrapped up, zip, they'd zap back out, you know, time would fix itself. But instead they just kind of hung out like those house guests that you can't get rid of.
Oh God. Yeah.
It's like Thanksgiving's been over for 6 hours. You have to go home.
Beast is still sitting there just eating pumpkin pie. And you're like, Beast, you got to go home. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, bro, you already fucked all this up. Now go home so I can sleep. And so the OG5 are just like that storyline just needs to wrap. I don't understand where they're going with it, and I don't think they do either. And I think they're at a point where they're like playing chicken with fans. They're like, "Oh yeah, you want them gone? We're gonna keep them forever." Yeah.
Last question before we get into the top 20: what are you excited for in 2017? Is there anything that you're hyped for right now?
Man, I think right now for 2017, you know, and this goes to my faults for sure, but I'm always willing to admit this one. I'm kind of hyped for the X-Men just because I know my initial feeling isn't that like these are going to be amazing books, but I'm an eternal optimist when it comes to it, and I really hope that I'm proven wrong. Like the OG5 book is the book I'm probably the least excited for cast wise, but like as far as creators, I love what Colin Bunn's been doing with Magneto and with Uncanny X-Men. At this point, I'm willing to give him a shot on any X-Men book he does, just because I really loved those books. So I would say the X-Men, and then also just seeing how Rebirth continues to extend.
The one thing I will say, like, so I am still cautiously optimistic about the X-Men books, despite the fact that I'm not in love with really any of the creative teams. But I do really like if you're going to use the O5, it is kind of fun to make Magneto their leader.
Oh, for sure. Oh, and also huge shout out. We can't go without, because this is Cena! Like OG 4-color stuff. Yeah. Cena getting Iceman. I'm all in on that book, bro. Yeah, that's going to be good. That should be a lot of fun. Like, I'm excited for the vibe on that book. So shout out to Cena, because, you know, he's kind of hung around by us for years now too. So
yeah, Cena Grace is writing X-Men, and he is a buddy of our show. So congrats, Cena. That's awesome.
Yeah. Big time.
I would say the thing I'm most excited for is finally getting Rebirth trades, because I know me, and you know me. Probably what will happen is I'll buy the first trades, and I'll find all these books that I really, really like, because I am like a hardcore DC fan at heart, and I'll probably start buying them all in single issues.
Yeah,
and that should, because I that's the thing I think that bothers me the most about trades, and I have it again. It's my own fault, Brandon, but I hate waiting.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's the environment we live in now, though. Like, you're taught that you don't have to wait for anything, and then when you do, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it is great. Like, it seems bonkers. I'm just like, wait a second, you're telling me I have to wait? Like, I mean, I think the first issue of Batman dropped in like June, and like the first trade doesn't come until January. I mean, that's not even that long, but like,
that's crazy though.
It does seem kind of crazy, especially because they're double shipping. It seems like they should be churning out trades like none other.
Yeah, like you would think you would want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we have entered the top 20 phase of the episode. So Brandon and I are going to lay down our 20 favorite comics of 2016, and we're going to do it in reverse order, going from 20 to number 1. Brandon, I'm going to kick it off this time, and I'm going to talk about my list or my first 2, because I have a cheater list. I start with a 21 and then go into 20. So you want to just go 1 for 1 and go back and forth?
Sure. This is, if nobody's ever watched one of these or heard one of these, this is generally the top 20, aka Brandon can't keep track of where we're at in the order of talking.
Yeah, but we used to drink a lot when we did this.
It's true, but even now I feel like I will definitely forget, because it's just tradition.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so 21 and 20 for me are both, they make my list for, I don't know. I guess if you've listened to Brandon and I talk, if you've seen 4-Color News and Brews, I'm always the analytical one, and Brandon is always the energetic one. And and like a lot of times, I'm always like, "Oh, this graphic novel was delightful and refined." But you know, both of these books for me are just pure entertainment. So number 21 is The Walking Dead, which I don't think has made my list in a very long time, but it is very entertaining again. And there's all kinds of drama going on. And the thing I like about it is the fact that, like, it's not an A+ book, but it's always like a reliable B+. I always enjoy it. It's always like has these surprising twists. It's got like characters that, you know, okay, this is going to sound really weird, Brandon, but The Walking Dead to me has kind of become what like Marvel used to be for me. In that, like, there's all these characters that I've grown invested in, and they've been around for a long time, and there's these creative teams that are like know what they're doing with them, and there's all these twists, and it's like a shocking soap opera, and I enjoy it for that. It's kind of like my comfort food for comics, which is a really weird thing given the fact it's a zombie drama that involves lots and lots of death.
It's a good book, so fair enough.
Robert Kirkman, Charlie Adlard. And number 20 is a book that is near and dear to your son's heart. It is Darth Vader.
Yeah, oh boy.
Yeah, from Kieran Gillen and Salvador Larroca. And that was a book that I caught up on because I was interviewing Kieran Gillen for my show. And I was like, I'll just read a few issues of this to, like, catch up on it and just kind of see what's up. And then I just like tore apart all of them. And then I end up buying the last, fitting into what we were talking about, I read all of it on Marvel Unlimited, and then I bought the last trade on Comixology so I could just catch up because I didn't want to wait anymore. And that was a great book. It's kind of weird because I kind of look at it as all coming out in 2016 because I read it this year.
Right.
But it was super fun. Kieran Gillen has an incredible voice for that world, and I thought he just did a phenomenal job of developing those characters and really making you care. I love Dr. Aphra, and I'm actually really excited for that book, and I will probably buy that in single issues just because I really like Kieran Gillen's voice for her, and I love like the droids, and I really like Kev Walker. Kev Walker's dope. So
Yeah, that book does not make my list, but yeah, you touched on it, like that was that and the Star Wars just, by itself title just were my kids' go-tos. And he was so disappointed when he found out that Darth Vader's being canceled. And then I was like, hey buddy, guess what they're replacing it with? I was like, Dr. Aphra. And he was like, oh my god, that's probably gonna be so much better. He's so excited.
So he's in on Dr. Aphra?
Oh dude, he's so in. He's like, is it gonna have the two droids? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh.
And like whatever the name is, and whatever the name is of like that like evil Chewbacca.
Oh yeah, what I can't remember.
It starts with like a K. It's really long.
Kyrgyzstan? No, that's not it.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Let's just call him Kyrgyzstan. So Kyrgyzstan's back. All right. So what's 20 for you?
Okay. So am I starting at 21 or 20?
Do you have a 21?
I mean, I got books that I didn't put on here. I could throw in there.
If you would also like to do 21 and 20, feel free.
I'm not going to touch on it too long, but I think the one book that made it just outside of my list was probably Green Arrow, Rebirth. It has kind of started to go downhill, unfortunately. I think the art change did it for me. But
I heard the art on that was really good at first. Did they switch artists already?
I think it's just for an arc. I think it's just the nature of how DC is doing books now. We're at twice ships, and so after a while they've got to give artists breaks, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, because you get it so quickly, you get such a large push of an art that maybe you don't like as much as the previous one. It becomes even more evident that you don't appreciate as much as the previous. Not to say that the current art is bad, because all these people can draw way better than me. But yeah, the initial part of it was really great, and I like that they brought Black Canary back in and things.
I do want to say one thing that's really interesting about double shipping and switching artists is when it's coming out so fast, and when like they don't like necessarily have artists that jive together, it really makes the difference stand out.
Big time. And there's been a couple examples of that with the DC stuff where it just is enough to change that you're like, ooh. And as soon as for me at least, as soon as I notice the change, it starts bothering me like almost the whole time.
I do want to say one thing that was really cool about Darth Vader is the fact that I'm pretty sure it was Loroca through the entire book.
Oh, I think you're entirely right. Like, and as a long-term reader, and I'm sure you're this way, and in an age where people can't seem to put 4 issues together and then a 5th on top of it, when somebody does a whole run, just 2 people, like, oh my God, just slow clap. Thank you very much. So 20 for me is a book that we touched on just a little bit ago, and that's The Mighty Thor. Oh. Not a book that I was buying monthly, and I may actually start, but up to this point I have not. But thanks to Marvel Unlimited, I read through some of those books, and then I actually got on Comixology because I was like, ooh, this could be a contender for my top 20. So let me go in and buy everything that's not on Marvel Unlimited. And that's the first time I have bought digital comics, and I don't know how long. Mm-hmm. So with it basically forcing me to go out and find it, I felt like it had to be on my list. It was a book that, like, again, initially, like, I prefer just standard Thor usually. But the first couple issues, it was kind of heavy-handed with the cancer stuff, I thought, once you found out who she was. But then once that kind of subsided and it was a factor of the character and more in a way that was like a kryptonite that's not always present, but always on the top of your mind, it became more of an effective book for me. And I think Dowderman, I think you said?
Russell Dowderman, yeah, guy's amazing.
Dude, the art is so ridiculous. And just in general, I mean, the writing from Aaron has been phenomenal throughout, and just it's been fun. Like even the sidetrack issues where they go off and like tell a tale, it's like, all right, I can get behind this.
Yeah.
So overall, that just was a really, really good book.
Yeah, I really like that book. I mean, Russell Dowderman and Matt Wilson combining on those the art is just unbelievable. And like some of the stuff they do, like whether it's like the just a random character, tiny little story beats, or like these big splashes, like just blow me away. Like they're equally adept at all of it.
And the colors, I don't know off the top of my head.
Matt Wilson.
Oh, Wilson. Okay, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I know Epting had stepped in at one point, so I was like trying to figure out what issues Wilson had done. But yeah, the coloring on that book is just perfect.
I do
Yeah.
like what you said about the cancer thing, because I felt like they did a really good job with that. The way that they, um, it was like she had to be as she couldn't do her God, the word is slipping my mind.
Chemo.
Uh, chemo. She couldn't do her chemo when she was Thor because it would be counteracted by switching to
Yeah.
Thor, and it was like I don't know. I mean, like there's a beautiful layer of heroism to that because she literally is sacrificing herself to do that.
Yeah.
And
Like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I just thought that was a really nice character beat.
Oh, I agree entirely. Like, and that was the kind of things that hooked me with it. It was just how quickly they could hook you. Like, when you can read a book, you pick up an issue, and after an issue, you feel like you're connected to a character who, in my case, again, touching back on the fact that I prefer regular Thor, uh, it connected with me like almost immediately. And I was like, ooh, I was
Mm.
resistant to this book, and in one issue, you got me hooked. Okay,
I
well done.
believe
I'm in.
I believe he prefers the phrase Odin's son now.
Oh, such a terrible name. If he's not going to be Thor and she's going to be Thor, I'm cool with that. Like, my daughter loves that Thor is a chick, so I'm all in on that.
Yeah, my wife.
But just give him a better name than Odin's son. God damn it.
It's the only comic my wife has ever read, and I'm fully in support of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So for me, number 19 is a book that has not had a lot of issues yet, but I honestly can't believe how much I like it, but I do. Doom Patrol. Gerard Way and Nick Darrington and Tamara Bonvillain or Bonvillain, I may have mispronounced that. And that book it's really weird. It's like an odd book because I honestly, have you read any of it?
Yep, I've read them all.
I honestly could just read a comic about Casey, the main character, just driving fast as an ambulance driver. And I would be totally fine with that. And I really, really like it. And I just think all the character stuff, I wasn't, apparently, if you've read the Grant Morrison stuff, that it may you may connect with it on a level that's different just because it is, I don't want to say derivative because that seems extremely insulting, but it seems like it's paying homage to the old stuff. I've never read the old stuff. So it all feels very fresh and new to me. And like Nick Darrington is like my surprise artist of the year. Like he came out of nowhere. I never experienced this stuff before. Actually, I did. I discovered recently that he's done some stuff that I've read before, including Ecstatics. But man, I love that guy. That guy is so amazing. And that book just looks so good. And it's an odd one, but I really, really like it. So that's my number 19. What's yours?
My number 19 is actually Action Comics Rebirth. I honestly, when that book was announced, I was like, definitely don't think I'm picking that book up. Lex Luthor, Superman thing, like it just, I don't know, I just wasn't too into it. And then the $2.99 price point came around, and so the week that came out, and DC did a much better job with Rebirth than they did with the New 52, where they were just releasing like gluts of stuff all at once. So when that one came out, it was actually a slower week, and I was like, fuck it, $2.99, I'll grab it. So I picked it up, and it just hooked me. Like, I enjoy the family man dynamic that Superman Clark Kent has now. I like the touch tone to the old universe prior to, New 52. And I like how it fits in the narrative leading off of, again, my favorite book of the year, DC Universe Rebirth, and just like it continues to push that plot line forward, like books like Flash do. And like some of the books, a lot of the books don't really do much to push the main Rebirth storyline along, but some of them do, and the ones that do are the ones that fascinate me the most, and this one is part of that narrative. And again, I just love the interaction, like him and his son, him and Lois. The stuff with Lex, even, that I was the most skeptical about, I find really enjoyable. I don't know. It's one of my more surprising books of the year for sure. Because at first I kind of scoffed at it. I was not. I was not too into it. But overall, it's fun. Like, it started with the Doomsday stuff. They kind of worked him out, and then all of a sudden there's like a Clark Kent that's not Superman, who never was Superman. Like, his origin's different. And you're like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of fun, and I like that they have done a good job of like seeding all these little plot lines that aren't paying off immediately. So that's my book.
So number 18 for me is Kill or Be Killed. It's the new Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips and Betty Brightweiser book. I am a super fan of them. I love that team, and I will read anything from them. And I have to admit, like the first issue, it was I really liked it in a classic Brubaker and Phillips way. But at the same time, it was a little staggering because the twist in the book I did not expect whatsoever, to the point where I was like, I don't know about this. And then I kept reading and it was really working out, and you realize it was kind of like maybe different than you expected, and also less of an essential point. Well, it is an essential point, but it's not like what everything is built around. And I'm purposely being vague in case you ever actually end up picking it up. But it is an atypical book for them that also is a very typical book for them, which is a weird thing to say, but if you read it, you would know. And it's great. I mean, like, Sean Phillips is amazing, and Ed Brubaker is, freaking Ed Brubaker, and Betty Brightweiser fits them perfectly. And it's like classic crime stuff with some weird supernatural twists to it, and I love it. What's your 18?
My 18 is Flash Rebirth. It is another one of the books that, coming out of Rebirth, continually pushes forward that plot line. I also enjoy that they actually have found a way to have two Wally Wests and have it work. I won't say much about this book because I think of all the Rebirth books, I know you like the Speedster, so this might be one of the ones you're definitely going to pick up.
I read like the first 4 issues of it.
Okay, how'd you like it?
I liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I think Josh Williamson, like, I've talked to him a bunch about it, and like he clearly loves the Flash and like really gets it. And I liked everything that he was doing with that. I was skeptical about the training of the Flash's thing, but it was actually working out really well, and I liked how it kind of beefed up the world. And I really liked all that stuff, and I thought the art team fit it really well.
Did you yeah, so I won't say much more because I don't know how far you got with that. But yeah, I would agree. Like, I was a little skeptical about the Flash School, and the way that story ends up paying off, it was so good. Yeah, like it was really good. It was one of those like, oh. And so that was really good. And just seeing like the developing relationship between, well, this is actually a comment and a criticism, I guess. Or a compliment and a criticism. The compliment is that I like how they've developed like a brotherhood between like the two Wallies. Instead of like a, hey, you're parallel me, there's definitely like a mentorship thing going. So
that's cool.
I like that. But what I don't like is that totally should be Bart Allen.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from me about Bart Allen being in the book.
Right.
He doesn't even exist in the DC universe anymore, right?
No, but I have hopes.
Oh, God, I would love it.
You know who else doesn't exist? Because me and you both got totally screwed by all this. My Superboy doesn't exist either.
Oh, no.
Nope.
Oh,
the only
man.
Superboy that exists now, Superboy, is John Kent.
Oh, man. Yeah, that I think that's fascinating because I don't know, because they were like harkening back to a certain generation. Although I guess it makes sense, right? Because it was like 20 years in the past, or like whatever it was supposed to be in Rebirth. I was like, this was back when Wally was a Teen Titan, so technically it makes a certain amount of sense. Yeah,
it just sucks because all of the other like Reign of the Superman characters have made their appearance, and I just don't ever see Colin L coming back.
You don't think there's an android out there wearing some weird like circle like sunglasses and a leather jacket just waiting for his moment?
Oh God, I hope he's not an android, but I'd be all in.
I thought he was kind of like oh no, he wasn't an android, like Lex Luthor.
He was a clone.
He was a clone.
And supposedly a third host, which we never, I think, ever got the answer to.
I somehow doubt we'll get that. Okay, this is a quick aside. Do you think that would be one of the top mysteries for you from comics to ever find out? Like, if there was like one thing that was never resolved, what would it be?
Oh man, it would be why, for some reason, there's some kind of underground, overwhelming current at Marvel to keep Maggot down. Without a doubt. I just don't understand. There have been so many opportunities to bring him back in a cool, awesome way, and they're like, nah, Maggot sucks. And I feel like it's more of like a ha-ha funny thing than they're actually missing out on the opportunity. It just
they don't even know. If you don't know. If you just put Grant Morrison and Mike Mignola in the book, it's done.
And there's some of you who have never listened to me talking to David about this kind of stuff, and you're like, this guy's silly. No, I'm dead serious.
Yeah, totally. I love the fact that it didn't even, like, there was no skip. I was like, oh man, he might have to think about this. I might have to cut out some time. I edited that not whatsoever. I mean, like, that was just, Brandon was straight there. Mine would be, I'm probably the person who cares most about this in the world, and I have no reason to actually care that much about it. I really want to know what Nick Fury said to frickin' Thor on the moon in Original Sin to, like, make him unworthy. Like, that still bothers me, and I don't, like, it's weird. I just want to know.
It bothers me too, because now that I'm picking up Mighty Thor and stuff, I'm finding that they don't touch on it at all, and I thought by now, like, they would have seeded something. In that
Unworthy
whatever.
Thor. I think you're gonna do it in like Unworthy Thor, like the 5-issue miniseries that stars
Yeah, because
Odinson
they
right now.
mentioned that first issue, right?
I haven't read it yet. If they just say that they're gonna like have that in the 5th issue, I will buy all 5 issues just so I can get there.
I would too, honestly.
I,
Just because that is a ridiculously long, dangling plot line at this point.
it feels like it, but I honestly think Original Sin was like what 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Oh, that was Original Sin.
It feels like it was
I
a
was thinking it was
million years
Infinity.
ago. But yeah, no, I want to know that very badly. Okay, so my number 17 is a graphic novel that came out from First Second. It was by Faith Erin Hicks. It was called The Nameless City. It is a wonderful comic, and it's just FYI, it is an all ages comic, and it's just really, really amazing art. I really love Faith Erin Hicks. As a cartoonist, she's just fantastic, and everything that she does is just really, really up my alley. But this was like a really great like story as far as just character work and also world building, and there was some amazing like little action sequences involving like kind of junior parkour, as I called it on the podcast with her. It's a really enjoyable book. It's like it's gonna be, I think it's a trilogy. And the next book comes out next year, and I really, really liked it. I thought it was really fantastic and just an enjoyable read for a reader of any variety is how I would put it. And you may think about, maybe I'll buy you a copy and I can send it down for Dex and Eva.
Yeah, I was gonna say I may have to look into that. They and that's another cool thing about this year is Dex is like everything I buy that's like appropriate, I toss in his room, and that kid consumes basically everything I consume, which has been really cool because we can talk comics.
So that's the main reason why you actually want Maggot to come back, so you can finally have somebody to share Maggot with.
Oh man, I think he's maggoted out already. We had that Las Vegas Comic-Con here,
Yeah.
and I waited in line for Scott LaBelle just so I could get a signature on Maggot's first appearance. We waited for like 20 minutes, and Dex was like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "He created Maggot." And Dex is like, "Okay." And he's like, "What else did he do?" And I was like, "He created Maggot." And he just wasn't buying it. And like when we sat in line for Claremont for like an hour, he was like, "Oh, this is the guy that like." I explained to him, "Hey, this guy did so much of the X-Men stuff that I love that led to you having your middle name Xavier." And he was like, "Okay, I'm not excited, but I get it. I'll wait." But with LaBelle, he was like,
he's like,
"What is a maggot?"
Really?
And I think I ruined him just standing in that line. I think he made a mental note like, "Fuck Maggot."
I think you told me this, but what was Lobdell's reaction when you told him, like, I stood in this line specifically so I could get you my Maggot first appearance?
I was like, "Dude, Maggot's one of my all-time favorite X-Men." And he was like, "Wait, what?" Like literally it caught him by surprise. And he was like, "Did you say Maggot?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, dude, I love him." And I pulled out my issue and he looked at it and realized it wasn't a joke. And I started taking out, it was $5 to get a signature from him. So I had $5 in my hand. And I took it and went to go hand it to him. He's like, "Keep it, brother. It's fine."
That's amazing. That is amazing.
So he was like, "Did you know that Maggot's original first name was?" And he like gave me a little history about Maggot, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I knew some of that, but some of it I didn't." And then I think I texted you right away.
Oh my god. So what's number 17 for you?
Okay, number 17, keeping the DC Rebirth train going, is Green Lanterns.
Man,
I really enjoyed that book. I was also with this book, like with Action Comics, totally not intending to get it. I was like, "Oh, cool. 2 lanterns that we've just introduced within like the last 5 years, probably less than that, and doesn't really star any like the main people I like." And then I was like, "Oh, $2.99. Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And that's a reoccurring story for me.
It really is. That's awesome.
It just goes on and on that way. And so I was like, $2.99, why not? And then I got it, and I was like, this is pretty good. And it never got to a point where it wasn't pretty good or really good. And so, yeah, DC in that $2.99 price point is a huge deal. But it's just been a fun book. The writing,
Sam Humphries.
Is it Sam Humphries? Which is amazing. Usually I rock him for the sexy rocks thing, but like Lou Pacino on art, or I'm sorry, on covers. And then just the art teams have been phenomenal. I think she is doing the art, isn't she?
I don't know. I'm not reading it, but I don't think she's doing Green Lanterns. I thought she was doing something else.
I feel like she is, but I couldn't.
We're definitely Team Lou Pacino. That is for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah. And so I've really enjoyed the book, and I like how like they play him as like this real cocksure guy, and she's like super not sure and very much like panic attacks and things like that, and how they basically are working as a unit. Like at the beginning, they're totally not in on it.
Hmm.
And so it becomes this like classic buddy cop type thing. And it's done in such a good way that it's like, oh wow, all right, I actually enjoy these. And it's weird though. I think if they separated them, I probably wouldn't be so big on it. But as a combinated unit, I'm just
I like
making shit.
I
You're
like
like Don.
combinated unit. That's
I'm
pretty good.
getting on a Don King tear.
I've heard that Maggot and Eenie and Meanie are combinated unit. Is that true?
Oh, it is. It's also true that the secret dark director of Weapon X in that new series is actually Maggot. He didn't die at the Weapon X facility during that series in the early 2000s. He was actually becoming the director.
Oh, that's amazing. So, would
Yeah.
you say that your love is real for Green Lanterns?
I would. I would say I have a lot of willpower for that book.
All right, I like it. All right, so mine's gonna be really easy. 16. I'm not gonna go into it. It's fucking Saga. It's Saga. I don't need to explain why Saga's good. It's Fiona Staples, Brian K. Vaughan, Phonographics doing Saga. People know what Saga is. Saga is amazing. So, Saga. What's your 16?
What is this saga?
Oh, shut up. It stars Maggot, actually. Maggot is in it.
Oh my god, that's why it's my number one. All right, so my next book is actually Tokyo Ghost by Rick Remender and Sean Gordon Murphy. Whenever you put two guys on a book who are easily in my top 10 of all time, I'm in. I'm like balls deep. And this was one of those books, and I thought there was a little lull in the series, like a couple issues for me that I just was like, okay, I don't really know what we're doing here. And then toward the end, it just really ramped up, and I really enjoyed the closure. Did you finish the series?
No.
Okay, I won't say
I
anything
was
else.
gonna read it all in trade, and I've not caught up yet.
Okay, I won't say anything else though, but or anything specific. But I liked how they ended the book. Like I felt like sometimes with these series that are really really good and you really enjoy them, they really have to stick the landing or it ruins everything.
Hmm.
And in this book, I felt like they really stuck the landing, and it wasn't. Some of it was obviously like with any good comic book, I guess, or I don't know. There's some predictability to it,
Sure.
some familiarity. But the ending was also clever enough that. See, I can't get into detail though. It was good though. The ending was really solid. They stuck that landing. And again, just the art on that book was phenomenal. That's one of those books I would love to just get in black and white. Rick Remender, I really, really, really love Rick Remender, and I thought he presented a really cool universe in a really cool way, in not the same type of book, obviously, but the same kind of view on the future that's plausible to a degree, kind of like Private Eye.
Hmm.
Where you can see, with some extremism, the future could move that direction with the way we abuse technology.
Oh yeah.
So I thought they did that in a really great way, and so overall, that to me was just a phenomenal book, and I was happy to see it end really, really strong.
Yeah, I remember the thing that stood out to me the most about that first issue was the dude who just like constantly was in the feeds. I'm like, I could totally see that. It seems like an episode of Black Mirror.
Dude, it's Donald Trump.
Oh God.
It is. Like, if you think about it, like, no matter what news program's leaning, we're constantly being pumped with Donald Trump. He's on our goddamn Twitter. Like, he is that guy. He's a hate screen, like in fucking 1984. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, 15 is another Image comic. It's The Fix by Nick Spencer, Steve Lieber, et cetera, et cetera. Nick Shaw, I think it is, and Ryan Hill. And I don't know if you're reading it, but it's same team as Superior Foes of Spider-Man, which I loved. It's more of the same. I'm actually reading it in trade, so I'm behind on actual single issues, I believe. But it's just such an enjoyable book, and it's funny, and it's just like light, and it's just like great crime stuff without being over the top crime stuff. And I really love the fact that the very first issue opens with the fact that it's really hard to be a criminal anymore because like no money is real, effectively. Like you can't go and like rob a bank because it's all like data basically.
Right.
And it's they were talking about how like the only people who are getting rich now are the people in Eastern Europe who like hack banks and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I never actually thought about this. Like being a criminal would suck in 2016. And so it is kind of funny how there's like a certain level of realism to it, despite its absurdity, that works really well. But Spencer and Lieber just work so well together, and it's really funny. And I don't know, like Lieber makes total sense to me, but it always blows me away when I think about the fact that Nick Spencer is like has been basically for the past like 4 years writing one way or another one of the funniest comics around. And I like, I've never really thought about Nick Spencer as a really funny guy, and that is a very funny book. So the Vix.
You're having to rethink it.
Yeah, exactly. So what's 15 for you?
15 for me is Batman Rebirth.
Very surprised it's not higher.
Yeah, it's not, only because I don't know. It tells really great stories. I don't love though, like Gotham Girl and her brother, because again, I don't know if you're planning on reading it. It's definitely worth.
No, like spoil that. I mean, like, frankly, Tokyo. I don't know. This is gonna be a really weird like delineation, but spoiling like a independent or like a creator-owned comic kind of seems different than spoiling like a superhero comic, because like you kind of always, like you said earlier, a lot of them kind of hit the same tropes, and so I kind of feel like if I read it, I'd kind of figured it out pretty fast anyways.
Okay, fair enough. So initially you get Gotham Girl, and I can't remember if he's Gotham Guy or what the fuck his name was, but they're brother and sister, and they have these powers that are like Superman. And he eventually dies, the brother, and they both have some kind of mental illness thing going on. And so Batman's working with her to try to like ground her and keep her on the side of good, because she has so much power that she could just do something ridiculous. So that's kind of how it starts. And that storyline for me started kind of slow, because I didn't really care for where that was going, because Batman already has so many ridiculous numbers of like side characters. It's like, okay, can we focus on some of those? If we're doing a rebirth, let's focus on some of those characters, bringing them back to the forefront. There are plenty of characters that haven't gotten any attention, like Batgirl. My Batgirl, at least Cassandra Cain, and characters like that. And so introducing new characters, putting so much focus on them was like, okay, it's cool.
Especially because they just introduced Duke, right?
Totally. And so Batman has like a larger family than he ever has, which works in some ways and in other ways does not. And so, but overall, Tom King's writing is really good. Again, the stories are good. I just didn't care for a few of the characters involved. So it was definitely obviously enough to keep me around and enjoyable. And Finch's art, Finch is hit or miss with me. When he does his writing and his arting, as we've said in the past,
yes.
It doesn't always hit. When he is doing the art for somebody else, it typically for me seems to come across a little bit better. Sometimes his line work isn't quite as much as I'd want it to be, but I still do enjoy Finch. I know there are some heavy critics, but I do enjoy Finch.
Do you feel like Jordi Belair compliments him well?
Is that who does the... Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Is that really who does the coloring?
Yeah.
Oh, Jordi. Yes, it definitely helps. I would say that definitely helps. I didn't realize that's who the colorist was.
Yeah.
But when I think about the art, yeah, that can definitely never hurt you. So overall, that it's a solid book. It really is. And I do enjoy how Finch draws the new Batman costume with the purple and stuff, because it's not so pronounced. It just flows with the costume. And Tom King also is doing a good job of having a slow boil plotline thing going on, and I'm all about that. I don't like the quick payoffs. I like when I have to invest my time long term, and I feel like he's doing that here. And so I don't know how much of that, like with Batman, with Capullo and Snyder, that was phenomenal, and that was all one giant slow burn all the way to the end. But you only got that from one book, and then Detective was like whatever it was at that given time. I really wasn't reading it, but it complements Detective Comics very well, and yeah. I enjoyed it.
I'm just thinking about in Detective when like the Joker took his face off or whatever. Like then they did like the cover where it was like the face. I don't remember what the deal was. I just remember the face thing, and I just remember being like, this comic seems weird. I don't know if I'm into that.
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to fix that. Yeah. New 52 was filled with all kinds of stunts that were like, yeah, you can't really fix that, so you've kind of ruined that. Okay,
Is his face still off?
We really haven't seen the Joker.
Oh, all right then. Yeah, that seems like a health problem.
Yeah, in Rebirth, well, because whatever. I don't know. Supposedly there's 3 Jokers now, so who knows how that pays off.
One of them's missing a face.
Yeah. That's a rough way to go.
Yeah, no doubt. That sucks. Poor Joker number 2.
They probably deserve.
So number 14 for me is a book that Brandon and I have both starred in the past. It's Chew by John Layman and Rob Guillory. It ended its run this year with issue number 60, and it ended. I don't know if you read it, but it ended in the most Chew way possible. Like, I honestly think that I would have been mad at it if it weren't for the fact it was Chew, but for Chew, it just made so much sense. Yeah. And it worked really well. But, like, the lead up to it was really fantastic. Layman and Guillory were just firing on all cylinders going up to it. And I like the fact that they kind of ended it. It was, like, partially plot oriented and also partially just kind of like saying goodbye to the characters, and it worked really, really well. And I don't know, I mean, it was Chew. I'm gonna miss it. Like, it's not often a book goes 60 issues these days, and the fact that by two people, like these two dudes like put in work, and they paid it off, and they completed their run, and it was great. It really, really was great. And I don't know. Congratulations to you guys. You guys are awesome, and I'm very happy you got to end your book the way you wanted to end it, even if it was crazy. What's number 14 for you?
Number 14 for me is Saga. Like David said, that book really doesn't need much of an introduction. If you're not reading Saga, you don't like yourself. But I did feel like Saga is on a really great upturn right now. Not that it ever bottomed out by any means, but it is on like this really cool upswing. Like, big things are happening, and it's getting really exciting. And I just feel like we're on the precipice of another big like time jump type thing or some big change. Yeah. And that's always exciting with Saga, because you know it's going to pay off in a really cool way. In some way, it may be heart wrenching, but it's going to pay off in a really great way. And so, yeah, Saga is one of those books, like, I'm excited to pick it up every week, because literally anything can happen in that book. Like, they just don't care.
Yeah. I've liked the Fang storyline quite a bit, like the planet they're on right now. Like, I think that's been a really, like, I don't want to go as far to say it was revitalized by it, because it was still great, but it's like, it's definitely like a high point after a series of like high, like plateau for a while,
Yeah, it's like they just shifted it into a higher gear.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It was always good, and then boom, we're just going to hit you a little bit harder. And it was just like, ooh, you're hitting in all the right ways. I like this.
Yeah. All right. So number 13 for me is East of West by Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragata. It is actually, I will say that it's another book that has just been going great for a very long time, but it's the end of its most recent arc was one of the most I would actually say it was probably the most satisfying moment in any comic I read this year. And it was just wonderful. And I think as a parent, you would probably really appreciate it. And it was just this like really great kind of like parent mixed with Western moment that was just tremendous. And Dragata with Frank Martin has just been like amazing. They're always amazing. And they're kind of on their break right now, and like they're just moving further into the second year of the apocalypse, which seems bad, but it's still really good. So yeah, East to West, always great, always great. What is 13 for you?
13 for me is Black Science.
Ooh.
I love that book. I feel like it's been on my list every year since it started coming out, in some shape, way, or form. I absolutely love that book. Rick Remender, I really enjoy him. Seriously, man, I'm a Remender forever at this point. And Matteo Scalera on art. It just, the two of them combined are just phenomenal, and the story's been so good. And one of my top 10 issues this year was one of the books from that. Was issue number I think it was 21, where he comes back and he ditches that chick on the planet, and the cops come and get her. Are you reading Black Science?
I am not.
Oh, okay. So there's a big payoff moment where this dirty chick who's done nothing but screw everybody, he just basically leaves her out and open to getting picked up by the police, and basically it's a giant like, screw you, you've screwed everything up, now you're going to pay the ultimate price. And as a fan of this series, it was one of those moments you were just like, yes. It was just, I as soon as I read the issue, I was like, oh, guaranteed my top 10, like guaranteed. As far as best issues,
I was gonna say, but it isn't in your top 10.
Yeah, as far as top 10 issues, like I knew immediately because just it was so gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
And then the storyline, after that continued to just be incredible with like his stuff with his daughter, who kind of like Invincible, like he loses her, and then when he finds her again, she's older,
Yeah.
and so he has to deal with that kind of stuff, and so it was kind of fun to see how all that played out and how her image of him is much different from the way he sees himself through her eyes, which is like a hero, and she sees him as like this complete fucking disaster that just ruins everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really enjoyed the interpersonal relationship, the art, the storyline, how much they change where the title is going, almost every 4 or 6 issues anymore. It's just one of those fun titles, again, like Saga, where it's just like, something good's coming.
Yeah. You totally ruined my next one, though, because I was going to be like, my number 12 is Black, and then you're going to be like, oh my god, he's going to say Science, but it's Black Widow. It's different.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, it's by Chris Samnee and Mark Waid and Matt Wilson and Joe Caramagna, the same team that was on Daredevil. And it is... Are you reading it?
I am not.
You should. I mean,
that's a Marvel Unlimited.
I'm just saying it's on Unlimited, and it is so good. It is like... I know, I kind of feel like this isn't saying much considering the fact that she doesn't exactly have like the most glorious history for comics, but it is the best Black Widow comic I've ever read. And
nice.
In the way that they use like the spy stuff into the story is so great. Like the entire first issue is like mostly silent. It's like, I would say 93% silent. And it's just really, really fantastic. And like there's so many amazing character beats. And I love the fact that Chris Samnee is co-writing it, because I feel like out of the stuff I've read from him, it feels like the most like brilliantly paced from an art standpoint. And partially because he's the one who is like, he's co-writing it. So he's getting to kind of dictate how the art is used in a new and different way. And it's a really good book. And it's just a beautiful book because it's Samnee and Matt Wilson. And yeah, it's one that I've been really, really enjoying, and I think you should definitely check out when you get the opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely will, especially if it's unlimited. I'll definitely check it out. I know I've added stuff like Squirrel Girl, and what was the other one that you recommended? There was another one that you recommended that you said were like really good, but I know Squirrel Girl. Yeah. I added onto my list just because I was like, all right, I got to check that. I still haven't yet, but I definitely will.
Yeah, you have no reason not to, because it's on unlimited. It's amazing.
I know. I love Marvel.
So what's 12 for you?
Number 12 for me is a perennial favorite. It's the second year in a row that it's not my number one, though, and that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by IDW. This is a book that I just absolutely love. This is a book that has not fallen out of my top list since the day it was born. It just, everything about it. Eastman and Waltz on writing, Wachter, Wachter. I don't know how to say your last name, so I will spell it. And then my boy Santaloco, obviously, because he makes me loco. I love everything about this book. It is by far my favorite iteration of the Ninja Turtles, and this is coming from like a die-hard cartoon Ninja Turtles fan with all the action figures and everything. They just do such a good job of like weaving different parts of different, universes, I guess, of Turtles or alternate realities, cartoons, comics, whatever it might be, into one just giant appealing, cohesive unit. And the development they take, like they've killed Donatello, they brought him back, they kind of have Splinter going evil, like they don't shy away from taking big chances which deviate from like source material and stuff, which is also something I really appreciate, because it's like getting a Big Two book that can have lasting change. So that's highly appealing for a Big Two fan. But yeah, Ninja Turtles, love that book. Just like Ryan Brown I mentioned earlier, Waltz and Santaloco should be on every book that Ryan Brown is not.
Next book on mine has not been going for a while. It actually only launched last December, and it's already finished. It's The Sheriff of Babylon from Vertigo. Tom King writing, Mitch Gerrard's on art, and that book was fantastic. It was a 12 issues, one and done, and then it's going to come back for a second season later on. But it was just an amazing story, and the thing is, Tom King is a fantastic writer, but he definitely, I'm not saying that any of the artists he works with are bad, but when he works with an artist that is as good of a character actor as Mitch Gerrard's is, the book has just such a higher ceiling. It's kind of like the Warriors. It's like, they were already good, but adding Kevin Durant, now they're horrifying. But Mitch Gerrard's is kind of perfect for Tom King, and that book was just fantastic, and I'm really excited for the second season. And Mitch Gerrard's is doing an arc for Batman, so you gotta see them together soon.
I like that.
Yeah. So what's your 11?
My 11 is Amazing Spider-Man. I love that book. I have been all on Slott's business as far as Spider-Man goes. I loved Superior Spider-Man. I guess I really wasn't reading a whole lot of Slott stuff leading into that. I read some and then dropped off, and then with Superior Spider-Man, I got in all full bore, and I've been all in since. And he's another one of those writers that really likes to tell long form stories. Mm-hmm. And so there is stuff paying off now that started before Superior and that was happening during Superior. And so you're getting all these things paying off that are now like 5-6 years old. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's a lot of fun. And I really enjoy like the clone conspiracy stuff they're doing right now, which, obviously isn't officially part of this because it's its own mini series, but feeds into this. And so I just have really enjoyed Slott Spider-Man this year. Like, at first I was a little leery on the whole like super rich Peter Parker guy, and they played that up a little bit, and they've kind of moved away from it as like a major focus, and instead are focusing on kind of what that new notoriety means to him as Spider-Man on a global level. And so that's been kind of fun to see, like, global Spider-Man. At some point, obviously, they'll rein it back in. They'll always do something like that. Comics are cyclical. But I like the ride we're on right now. And yeah, I like that book, but just finished right outside of my top 10.
Maybe the way that they're going to reverse it is, like, they could do some sort of deal with the devil. What do you think about
Spider-Man would never do that.
That's true. That just seems far-fetched to me.
No.
So my number 10 is another Brian K. Vaughan hit. It's Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chiang, Matt Wilson, who just keeps coming up over and over, and Jared K. Fletcher. It is Paper Girls, which has been super entertaining. It's an odd book in the sense that it's like, this may not make sense, but it'll probably make a lot more sense than I think it will. It's like the plot itself is like, I'm not in love with it, but I just enjoy spending time with the characters so much, and the art is so phenomenal that I just really love it. Like, I just love going on this adventure with these people, and I have no idea where it's going, and it's like over a year into the book, but it's just really enjoyable. It's a fun book, and the characters are great, and it's beautiful, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of in a weird way like the perfect Brian K. Vaughan book in that regard, because I don't know. I would say above all is a character writer to me. And, and it just works so well. And like, I have no idea where it could go. Like, they're in, I not to spoiler alert for people who are not reading Paper Girls or behind or whatever. They're like in a different like way in the future now, or in like a different dimension or something. Like, they just did that. And I have no idea what the hell is going to happen, but I'm excited to find out, and I'm excited for them to find out because it's crazy. What's your number 10?
Yeah, real quick aside, like I'm reading that book as well. It didn't make my list, but I am reading that book, and I do love how like X-Men-y like time has become. Like, there's just like all this weird shit. Like, I'm you from the future. It's like, yes, like I don't know what's going on, but yes. That's a really, really, really great book. All right, my number 10 is Superman.
Nice.
I love this book. It, again, hurts me that it has essentially helped to eliminate Con-El, Superboy, which is one of my all-time favorite characters. But, as a Maggot fan, I'm okay with that. I can live. I really enjoy it. It's a lot like Robin, Son of Batman, like we were talking about earlier, in that it's about that father-son interaction. And so it's a fun book for me as somebody who has kids. And then it's even more fun because my son reads it, and my son is just like all in on this John Kent Superboy thing. And so it's kind of fun. Like, my Superboy's gone, but now my son has a Superboy. And so there's some of that kind of stuff with Rebirth that I enjoy, because I am, again, giving everything I read as far as Marvel and DC for the most part over to Dex. And just watching him read through it and what he gloms onto. And so Superman stuff and the family connection is something he has glommed onto. And so that makes it that much more enjoyable for me. But outside of that, Tomasi and Gleason are such a good friggin' art team, or art and writer combo. Like in that list thing that you had me rate in, like they were hella high up there. Just they're so consistently good. I mean, and it doesn't matter what they're doing, they kind of make it their own and they run with it. They have like a Franco Baltazar type vibe in that it may be something that's been done in the past, but they have their own flavor, and it's a unique flavor between the two of them. And so, yeah, I absolutely love that book. It's so much fun. They had one where they basically made Last Frontier canon because they went to that little island where all like the dinosaurs. New Frontier, sorry, yeah. They made that kind of canon by going to that island with the dinosaurs and stuff, and like it's like Superman and his son like fighting dinosaurs and shit. And I was like, this is awesome. But yeah, so I love that book. That is a dope book.
I would say that was probably the book that I've heard the most like universally positive response to.
It's so fun. Like, 52 was kind of dark and they really tried to amp it up on the darkness level. This really pulls it back and just is so much fun. Like, it is just a fun book. And now they're bringing in Damian, and because they're going to spin it off into that book with Damian and John. Yeah, Super Sons with Damian and John. And this is seeding into that. And it's got me so amped for that book with just the two of them, because the way they interact off each other in this book, it's just such a great relationship. It's like Batman and Superman, but a totally different relationship. And, again, just condescending Damian and then like an aw shucks Superboy. It's just a whole lot of fun. And so this last arc's been great. And overall, seriously, if there's one DC book to pick out, that might not be the one I would tell you to pick up, but it would be top 3.
Nice. I imagine there might be 2 more books in the rest of your list from DC. So number 9 for me is The Wicked and the Divine by Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey and Matt Wilson and Clayton Cowles. And it is the thing about this book is like there's 2 things. One, it was genuinely one of, and this is going to sound weird, but it was genuinely one of the best superhero books I read this year. And that like it's like the gods in that book have just kind of become, it's not straight super heroics, but there's just just awesome battles. Like there was this really like amazing action like sequence in like the 22nd issue, I think it was, that it felt very X-Men-y, like going back to what you were saying about Paper Girls. It kind of in a weird way, it was like it was made by people who were influenced by like 90s X-Men in a weird way. And I'm not saying that they were necessarily, but it kind of felt like that. But and then like I like the fact that they keep like pushing the boundaries of the comic, form. In like the 23rd issue, it was like an interview issue with all the gods, and it was had pinups by Kevin Wada, so it was actually laid out like a magazine. So I like the fact that they're doing different things, and I like the fact that they're not just resting on their laurels the further they go into the run. They're actually pushing the boundaries of what they can do, and I love it. And I'm really excited about this new arc. It's called Imperial Phase, which will be really interesting to see, or like Imperial Phase Part 1. So it'll be really interesting to see where it kind of goes from here. But I always support creative teams who try to find new ways to like roll out their story the longer they get into a run, and they're doing a great job with it. What's number 9 for you?
Number 9 for me is a book that has fallen off my list in recent years, but this year has had a massive resurgence in my opinion, and that's Invincible. This has been a book that has picked up a lot of slack. For a little while there, I kind of felt like it was in a rut. It just kind of was going through the motions, and then he came back and found that his daughter was older, and issue 127 in my top 2 issues. It was my number 2 issue of the year. That issue was so heart-wrenching, like between finding out that his daughter was older and seeing her again and her registering that was her dad, and then him finding out that Eve had another dude while he was gone, and just like it was such an emotional issue, and it was so well done, and it reminded me of all the good times of Invincible, where something drastic changes, but it fits organically and has that vibe that I think Kirkman has said in the past that he was originally going for, which was, what if Spider-Man had aged? What if he hadn't always stayed as a kid? And so one of the tropes of Spider-Man is there's always these obstacles that come in the way that you would never wish on anybody, but they always happen to him because it ruins his life and it makes it interesting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirkman does that so well in Invincible. Like, Mark's life is so sad. Like, that guy's
really
life is so fucked. It's so terrible. And I love that Kirkman is such a miserable human being that he does that to him. Because it's so good. And so everything basically, after that point of him coming back has just been so through the roof good. And I'm just so excited. And it's sad to know that it's coming to an end, but I'm also excited because with a book like this, they could literally do something huge every issue from here until like 142 or whatever the final issue is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So I'm so stoked for this book, and it was so good this year.
I actually think you're going to get that because I said when I had Sean Makowitz, the guy who edits the book on my podcast, and I was like, there's no way you can top the Viltrumite saga, and he's like, well, the last arc will. And I was like, damn.
All I'm saying is if anybody out there is listening and wants to make a little boy's dream come true, Al the Viltrumite.
Oh no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
He's stronger. He's a Viltrumite. It's happening.
Oh my god. I feel like there needs to be some sort of... I wonder if there's other yous out there who thinks this.
There's gotta be. I'm sure there's a Reddit thing. I don't do Reddit, but I'm sure there's a subreddit somewhere.
We need to do a subreddit or like a post on there just to ask people, like, does anyone else think Al is a Viltrumite?
If it doesn't happen, I'm just gonna have to go the route of fan fiction. I'm gonna have to start writing it.
Well, you might.
Al the Viltrumite and Maggot go on a road trip.
We'll see what happens. We'll see. That could be like the big reveal at the end. We're like, no, not Al the Viltrumite.
I hope he's like. I've always hoped that he's like a hidden agent for the Viltrumites. Like, he's evil as shit.
He has deep cover because, like,
yeah.
very
he's had
deep cover.
All kinds of shit happen, but they know he can heal because he's a Viltrumite, so they don't mind doing it to him.
There we go. All right, number 8 for me is a graphic novel by Sam Bosma called Fantasy Sports, Volume 2. Last year it was on my list too. It is the sequel to the first one. Basically, the first one would be like, what if somebody who really, really liked dungeon crawling video games and really, really liked basketball and also just I don't know, like grew up on like Hayao Miyazaki and other animation stuff, made a comic book about all those three things together. And it was amazing because I love basketball and all those different things, but this one was just continue the story of the characters, and I love the characters, and Sam Bosman is an amazing cartoonist, and it's just like I like the fact that every single volume is gonna be a different sport. Like this one,
that's cool.
It was volleyball, and the next one it's gonna be golf, and it's so cool, it's so fun, and it's also, again, all ages, so maybe Dex would like it.
That might be something I'm more into. Dex doesn't care for sports, but I like sports, and I like the sound of that book.
You can straight up see, like, the guy is such a good cartoonist. You can straight up see, like, the basketball players that influence his like art in the first one.
That's
like,
awesome.
You can see like Steph or like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in there and stuff like that, and I think it's pretty cool. What's 8 for you?
Number 8 for me is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps.
Nice.
Venditti and Ethan Van Sciver and Sandoval has popped in, I think, for this last arc here. I really enjoy that book. I think as a Green Lantern fan who hasn't really cared for Green Lantern books for a while, I don't know the last time I bought a Green Lantern book. I think this is something we talked about on last year's podcast. For the year end. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to have Green Lantern books that I enjoy again. And this is a really solid one. I like what they've done with Sinestro and Hal's relationship. I like that they're introducing, different elements like, this one's actually, one of the elements is coming from another book, but they're interconnected again a little bit more, which I think is fun. And I've just really enjoyed it. Guy Gardner is in this book, so that's always a plus.
You should have just led with that.
You're right. I should have just said Guy Gardner and then just ended the podcast. I should and done. But yeah, no, like this last little bit had like Starro, which was great. So it was like Soranik Natu is running the Sinestro Corps now, mm-hmm. and Hal Jordan kind of did some stuff that took him out of the equation, and so John is running the Green Lanterns to a degree, and they're like joining together to fight Starro, and I was just like, this is so much fun, like this is so awesome.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, again, with the rebirth of the lighter feel, the more crazy feel, less of the dark brooding shit. Mm-hmm. It's just been a really, really fun book, and again, as a Green Lantern fan, I like to see it done well, because Venditti isn't really somebody that just appeared. He's been doing Green Lantern books through the period of time I didn't really enjoy. So it's cool to see that just a little bit of a change of direction, opens him up to do a lot more, and obviously is, for me at least, much more enjoyable. So
yeah. Number 7 for me is Kaiju Max, which made my list last year. Its second season ran through this season. It was, or this year. It's by Xander Cannon, who's doing like everything pretty much, I think. Besides like a little bit, I think he has like a color assist person. And anyways, it's just a phenomenal book. And the thing that I will say about it is it's probably the comic that has made me the most sad while still making me love it. And it's really odd to say that about a book that's ostensibly about a prison, a supermax prison for kaiju. But it is really, really effing sad, man. It's ridiculous. And anyways, it's really great. I like, it's not only sad. I'm making it sound too sad, but it is like it wrenches at your heart. And I think you would really, really like it. It's a really good book. And I also want to give a shout out to Xander Cannon, because Anchorage, Alaska, my hometown, your former hometown, was in the most recent issue, the final issue of the season. And thank you for not destroying West Anchorage with the kaiju, because I would not have survived. Like they got some of the parts away from me. That's fine. Kill South Anchorage. I don't care. West Anchorage, leave that alone. So yeah, Kaiju Max, awesome. What's your number 7?
I still need to check that book out.
It's great. It's really great.
I know you were saying that was definitely something I would enjoy. I definitely need to check that out.
I will say this, and this is a real thing. When he was sitting near Ryan Brown at Emerald City Comic Con this year, and Ryan Brown said that was one of his favorite comics.
All right, I'm in.
All right, there you go.
Done deal. You gave me the Ryan Brown stamp of approval. Number 7 for me, and my final DC Rebirth issue is Batman Detective Comics.
Oh.
I love that fucking book. So I know I mentioned earlier, Batman has like the biggest expanded family he's seemed to have had in quite a while, and in some ways it's done poorly, in some ways it's done well. This book is where it's done well. It's like he has his own like X-Men New Mutants type deal, where he's training up and coming characters and Clayface randomly to like go out and be his like assault team and take care of Gotham. And it's been so much fun. And there's been plot lines in there which have pushed forward the Rebirth thing in a very, very big way. And so that's been fun. But overall, like, the assembled team is great. Like, you have Cassandra Cain, who is no longer Batgirl, but is in the picture and has kind of a Batgirl-esque costume from her era. You have Batwoman, you have Spoiler, you have Clayface, you have Batman, you have, I don't know, you've got Nightwing has appeared through the Monster Men arc. It's been a lot of fun, and again with the payoffs, and then like there's been a lot of artists on this book though, like a lot, like Eddie Barrows and I don't know, like a lot. Like I feel like almost every couple issues they change artists. I'm not even making that up. This is not your standard Brandon hyperbole. But it's one of those books where it works. Like the art isn't so crazy jarring, or it fits. And they've done really cool stuff with like doing 2-issue arcs and stuff like that, which is almost unheard of in the trade paperback era. And so I really respect that kind of stuff. So I really, really, really like this book. This is my favorite New 52 book at the moment.
I've heard really good things about it.
It's so James Tynion is really, really, really killing it.
Nice. So number 6 for me is coming from a very common name on this list for you. It's Rick Remender's and Wes Craig's Deadly Class, which is an amazing book, although negative props to my comic shop Bosco's Comics for the fact that it is on my pull list, and they somehow did not pull it for me this most recent week. So I have no idea what happened in the most recent issue. However, I will say that they did something in a comic that I like. It's not often where I'm genuinely completely shocked while reading, while engaging with any type of story. And they did something in like the end of, I think it was the 4th arc, that blew me away completely, to the point where I was like, that didn't just happen, did it? Did that really just happen? And it did, much to my chagrin. But it's worked out really well. And Wes Craig is in my opinion, the best artist in comics these days. So like that is a huge advantage for him. It's a great book, really great book. That's mine. What's your number 6?
My number 6 comes far out of left field. Definitely was not in my list last year, didn't exist last year, but is a continually incredibly fun book, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Did not see that coming.
No, and this is one of those books that would have, if you'd have told me last year, this book would have been in my top 10 and just a hair short of my top 5. I'd have been like, haha, yeah, I'm right. But I love this book. I like, it's so much fun. It's like they play the Power Rangers less as like really like dare enthused, and I mean like drug abuse resistance education enthused teenagers, and more of like a superhero squad who has like a giant robot that they can fight in.
Yeah.
And it's cool as fuck. And then like this last issue was hella cool. They like had a whole, they haven't gotten to the White Ranger. It's all Green Ranger stuff. But at the end of the issue, there's like a White Ranger who's like fused with a Green Ranger who has like a tiger pattern. And you're like, who the fuck is this guy? And so it's been awesome. And I know the writer, God, who does that book? He has said that he has no intention of sticking to Kyle Higgins. Okay. He's been doing a great job, and he was saying that he isn't beholden to the continuity, so they can kind of do their own thing. And this book, honestly, for me, is like what IDW's Ninja Turtles is for Ninja Turtles. Like, they've given you a little bit darker Power Rangers without losing that teamwork feel and that good guy vibe, but playing it again more as like a superhero squad. And it's so much fun, and they dig deep into a lot of the like the Power Coin stuff, and you've got Zordon and Alpha, and it plays on the nostalgia, but it also pushes it forward to a point where, again, all of a sudden we have this crazy new White Ranger that has nothing to do with anything in canon, and you're like, whoa, like you guys went left field, I'm all in on this. But yeah, totally random, crazy, weird, but fuck, I love that book.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it when random books come out of nowhere. Speaking of that, I mean, this isn't a random book out of nowhere for this year, and I'm not going to get in too in depth on it because I know it's going to be on Brandon's list, and if not, I'm going to have to like get his head examined. But number 5 for me is The Vision by Tom King, Gabriel Hernandez Walta, Jordi Belair. That book ended. It was a 12-issue run. It is, I never expected to buy a Vision comic, especially about a domestic life of the Vision family. But I did, and it was amazing, and it was an emotional journey. And if I could recommend probably one Marvel or DC comic to just any person, that would probably be it. Like from like the last year of stuff, that would almost certainly be it. So that was my number 5. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is, be prepared for this one, and I'm prepared for some criticism. Uncanny X-Men.
Oh, dude, I'm not going to come. Is it because of Greg Land?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've talked about this book over the course of the year. Greg Land's art is at times infuriating in the way that it's definitely shadow boxed from WWE wrestlers and porn stars or whatever we're going for. This book is like Greg Land toned down quite a bit in those regards. It still has the Greg Land flair. I mean, you're not going to get away from that. That is who he is, and he should stick with that because that's what's made him what he is. And Colin Bunn on writing, though, is just so good. Like, him on Magneto was awesome, and you've carried that same Magneto character over to a team of X-Men, and you've got this really cool plot line that's going with, like, Psylocke not trusting him, but still thinking he's kind of doing the right thing, and separating herself from the team, but he's still kind of controlling her, and so you get this really great manipulative Magneto working everybody. And just, it feels like an X-Men book. Like, it just, these cool stories, like the last issue had Psylocke battling Mystique, the Naughty Boys. Is it the Naughty Boys with like Ruckus in them?
No, wait, the old guys, like the back in like the 80s
from like the X-Men cartoons.
Oh
like
God, I don't remember what they're called. The Wild Boys? No.
Wild Boys, Naughty Boys, something like that. But like Ruckus was in there and stuff like that. And then Sauron, like in one issue, she goes through and like fights all these Prime Sentinels from like Operation Zero Tolerance. Like in one issue, she just goes through and fights all these people, and then helps Mystique in a big way in shedding some of the brain stuff that's happened from her shifting constantly. Mm-hmm. And so it's a clever book in some regards in what he does with some of these characters. But I've really enjoyed it. And Greg Land's art, again, has not been everything that I would hope from an X-Men book, but it hasn't been quite as Greg Landy, and that sounds terrible. And I apologize if Greg Land ever listens to this. Again, everybody on this list can draw better than me, and you're my number 5 book on my list, so it's not that bad.
Nasty Boys.
Nasty Boys. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was, to use a wrestling term, I was marking out hardcore. Like, you had Sauron, you had the Nasty Boys, you had Prime Sentinels. I was like, yes! I was just amped up because it was like, oh, give me everything 90s that I loved. But yeah, like he's done a good job of like dipping into, you know, older characters we haven't seen in a while and playing with newer stuff. And yeah, overall, I just really enjoyed that book. And it's one of the reasons that I'm not super excited about the new stuff that's been introduced, because I kind of like what we have right now.
Yeah. My number 4 is Headlopper from Image Comics by Andrew McLean. He's the guy who does everything on it besides coloring, which is by Mike Spicer. It's a book that came out quarterly. It was like only came out in like these big, thick editions. Like there were actual issues. They were like gigantic. I actually really liked reading it in like every 3 months it would come out, and it would be this huge ass story, and it would be amazing. And the first 4 issues combined to be one gigantic trade, and it is such a good comic. I think you would love it. It's very metal. It's like Vikings and swords and all this stuff, but it's also really fun. It's kind of like, it's very Hellboyish. Nice. It's just a really, really great book, and I just enjoy the hell out of it. And Andrew McLean is such an amazing artist. I don't know, I can't think of somebody I can't think of a comic that more fully reflects one person's view as a creator than this book, and it just works so well. I think you'd really like it. If you get the chance, you should definitely pick up the trade. But it's like a one and done story, and then like there's a new story I think starting up in March. But like each arc is going to be completely like discrete like stories, and I think that's really fantastic. And yeah, you should watch it, or you should read it.
Yeah, I read the first issue. I liked it, but just with cost of comics and everything, and some of that stuff goes to a trade waiting thing, like you said.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely one of the books that I would like to pick up and trade.
You should. What's your number 4?
Number 4, again, continuing with the I kind of like what we have now trend, is Extraordinary X-Men.
Oh
I am an unabashed Jeff Lemire fan. I tend to enjoy most anything he does, except for whatever that Justice League thing was he did during the New 52. That wasn't great. But outside of that, like I really enjoy me some Jeff Lemire. And then Humberto Ramos was really, really, really solid on this book. It really felt like, obviously it was a more modern team, but it felt more classic to me. You had Jean Grey, granted it was OG, Colossus, Storm, Magic, Nightcrawler, Wolverine. You know, you had kind of that like all new, all different X-Men vibe. And I don't mean like the newer stuff. I mean like with Claremont. And the stories were fun, and they were large, and they did a lot in Limbo. That's where like the X-Men are living right now, and I liked where they played with that and with like the demons and the things like that Magic could control. So she became a very large part of that book. I just really, really, really like this book. This is one of those books that we talked about this before we started filming. Like as far as books that I bought. And incorporating how many times a book made me like have a really strong positive feeling for it and going into a list. On that list, this book finished 3rd for me. So with 12 different separate issues giving me like a really great reaction to it. Mm-hmm. So this was in and out a really, really great book. The only reason it didn't make it higher is because the next 3 are fucking ridiculous.
Nice. So number 3 for me is a staple to my list, and you mentioned it earlier. It's The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. I wouldn't. This year, it's not the book that I enjoy the most, but it's right up there. It's such a creative superhero story in that like all the solutions to like the supervillain problems are very atypical. But I gotta give them like so many props because it is such a creative book, and like the same team does every single issue. Well, besides one this year, and the only reason why the artist wasn't doing the one issue that she didn't do, in which she actually did art in, was because she was also drawing a graphic novel of Squirrel Girl. at the same time, which is amazing. So they had like a full slate of issues this year, plus they had a graphic novel, and they were all amazing. I love that book. Get that book to Eva. There's all kinds of little girls that like show up in their letters columns with like their little squirrel that they have now, like a squirrel stuffed animal they've gotten because they love Squirrel Girl so much. They want to be a Squirrel Girl. Get that to Eva. She would love it. Actually,
I will have to do that.
I will get you the first trade and I will send it to you for Eva as a Christmas present.
Right.
Anyways, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a new book this year, but with a creative team that I incredibly enjoy working together, and that book is Seven to Eternity by Remender and Opeña. Yeah, I absolutely love this book. It finished in third, but two of my top 10 books were from this. The first and the third issue I thought were phenomenal, and I loved that it was just a real quick 3-story arc to give you everything that you needed to go, and now we're on our way and the big story starts. I love the art. It's like incredibly it's like when they did Uncanny X-Force. Like you just had these incredible environments, and it's them basically just without any need to hold anything back, just going all out. So the character designs are phenomenal. The action sequences are great. The storyline is phenomenal about this guy, like trying to, go out and write some. I don't want to spoil too much. I don't know if you're reading this or not.
I am not, but I like that's definitely one I'm getting in trade. But Opeña's stuff looks amazing from it.
Yeah, I won't spoil anything then because this book, I'm 100% serious. You've got to read this book. It is so good. I love the way they do the covers. I'm a big covers guy. It's a consistent like trade dress on the cover that looks really cool, and the art style that they, it's Opeña, and then they do have some alternatives and things like that. But so far, every issue they've got a 50-50 variant. But it's just, oh my God, the story is so cool. It is so awesome, and it's one of those books that like I get so supercharged for. Like you look forward to books that aren't just going to be like a book that you're just like cool for an arc. You're all in, and this is one of those books for me.
My number 2 is a book that before this year I'd never read, and it's technically not even a book. I mean, there are book forms of it, but it is a web comic, and it is called Bad Machinery. It is the comic that I enjoy more than any comic, and I would actually probably immediately put it into maybe my top 10 comics of all time. I like it so much. It's and the crazy thing is, so I was interviewing the writer and the guy who does everything for it. He's a cartoonist. His name's John Allison. He also writes Giant Days at Boom, and I had him on my podcast. So I was like, I'll check out his webcomic too. And he does this comic called Bad Machinery. He's been doing it since I think 2009 or 2008. I read basically all of them in a row. And and that was producing like 5-ish comics a week, like one page comics, not in a row, but like over a period of like a month. I was just only reading that, and the comics were stacking up, and I was so into it. And basically, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. It's about 3 boys and 3 girls who are like in kind of like high school age, that are going to school in England, and that they are basically they're solving mysteries, and it is the most ridiculous and fun book I've ever read in my entire life. It is so like the art is so great, and the character work is just unbelievable. And it's not even about the mysteries. It's really just about kind of where it takes them and like the relationships between the characters. And it's actually really fun too, because the characters are aging. Like there's like this entire arc where like the boys just disappear, and it's because they're like horrifically awkward because they're going through puberty and they just stay in their rooms and are moody all the time. And
that's awesome.
It's amazing. And anyways, I'm fully caught up, which kind of makes me sad because now I like get it in a drip as opposed to like constantly. But I'm actually going to get all of the collections of it because he had kind of like remastered them and added in parts to like fill in some of the gaps that he felt like were in the story. So it is such a good comic, and it is if you'd like to read it, it is online in its entirety at scarygoround.com. So you should read it, Brandon. You would really like it.
Definitely hit up scarygoround.com.
Yeah, and you just have to go back to the beginning of the story, and that is a long time ago. But what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a book that you've already actually mentioned, and that is The Vision.
Woo!
That book was emotionally draining. If Robert Kirkman is an asshole for the things he did to Mark, then I don't even know what to call Tom King. He is just a horrendous person, because he ran Vision through the worst ringer that I could imagine. And like you said, I just could never imagine myself buying a Vision book. And the only reason I did was because King and Walta had killed it on that Magneto I mentioned earlier. And I was like, all right, I'll give
on the
that a
what?
shot.
You kind of broke up
On
for
the
a second.
Magneto book, prior to
That was Cullen Bunn.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry. Walter's art on Magneto
And
was
Bel
the
Air.
reason that I
And
came
Bel Air.
over. Yeah, and Bel Air. Well, yeah. I feel like I don't mention her, but it should go without saying. Like, she should color every comic. Again, like I said earlier, it's just never a bad thing to have more of her. But the book was just so good. Like, there were 2 issues in my top 10 from that, number 7 and the final issue, number 12. Just the way everything tied back together, and just how emotionally draining, like literally emotionally draining, some of these issues could be. Like, you'd get done, and Tom King would talk about it in the back in the letters, like, man, I just can't imagine what worse I could do to them. Like, and you knew that he was lying. You knew that every issue he was going to do something worse.
Yeah.
And oh god, it was just so good, and the way they wrapped it up was just perfect.
Mm-hmm. It really was. I actually really expect that to be your number 1, so I have no idea where it's going to go now. My number 1 is a book that I actually read an issue of last week, and I was like, that has to be my number 1. That just has to be. And it's a comic that I've only had 4 issues of so far. It's Jonathan Hickman and Tom Coker's Black Monday Murders. And
Nice.
It was one of the 3 books that I actually I said I was switching to trades on everything that wasn't numbered to over 10, and it was one of the 3 books that I started at number 1 this year. And it is not like any comic I've ever read in my entire life. Every issue is $4.99, but every issue so far has been like a journey. There's so much depth to everything, and Tom Coker's art is like unbelievable, and everything about that world is so fully realized. It's kind of like peering into like an alternate universe where comics are slightly different than what we have, and Jonathan Hickman's just like, I'm just going to take their comics and do them over here, and it's just unbelievable. It like blows me away reading that comic every single time. I don't know where it's going, but it's so powerful while you're reading it that it just, I don't know, it's just different. It's like you read it and it just feels different than everything else. And I think there's something impressive about that. It's doing things completely different than every other comic. And yeah, I don't know if I can give a better compliment. Like, I guess in a way, like Grim Fairy Tales Apocalypse is probably doing things different than every comic, in the sense that it's a Zenoscope comic. And it's about, like, I don't know, Maid Marian being sexy or something. But Black Monday Murders does it in a good way. So yeah, that's my number 1.
Yeah, I have not read that book, just again because you mentioned the price point, but my buddy that I work with reads it, and he likes it, and so I've been meaning to check it out.
What is your number
my
1?
number 1, and this book is by far and above. There was never a doubt as far as I was concerned. When I was, like I told you earlier, I was like hemming and hawing over some of these picks. This one was above and beyond, without a doubt, my number 1, and that's Old Man Logan. I love that book. I like it's the same team that was doing Green Arrow that I loved tremendously, and then you move them over to Old Man Logan, and at first I was like, okay, I would just prefer to have Logan, but this is the most Wolverine comic that I can remember in I don't know how long, like maybe even going back to like Hama's run, Scott Hama.
Yeah.
Like going back to
Larry Hama.
Larry Hama. Sorry, Larry Hama. I don't know why I said Scott. Going back to that run, like it feels that much of a Wolverine book. And then Sorrentino's layouts and his art are just so phenomenal. Like there was one panel where it was like Wolverine's head, and it just had all these little mini panels of like previous Wolverine experiences that made up his head in like a giant collage, and it was just so cool. And other stuff, like he had a dream sequence in one of the books where like people are it's just such a phenomenal book. Like that team together is so incredible. That was one of those teams on your list that I may have put number 1. I absolutely love that book. I love Wolverine. He's my favorite character, and I love when he is done right, and this is the most right he's ever been done, even if he's not, quote, my Wolverine. The book is just so filthy good.
Yeah. I actually, if I'd really thought of it, I should have realized that was going to be your number 1, because you've talked it up a lot and it hadn't appeared yet. But yeah, no, it makes sense. That it was a good year of comics. Okay, I'm retracting what I said earlier. Like it wasn't a down year. It's like when you actually get in the mix of everything, it was pretty. It was a good year.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, like, in some aspects, like you said, I'm definitely a big 2 guy, without a doubt. And in some aspects, like, they haven't done well with things that I enjoy as much. And this year, I felt like they did a much better job. Like, I really genuinely felt the X-Men books this year were a lot better than they've been in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they did Wolverine really well. And then over at DC, Green Lantern, Batman on a rise again. So yeah, for me in the big 2 stuff, it was a huge year. But then, getting out of that, you have Seven to Eternity and Invincible and Saga. And I mean, just across the board, so many good comics this year.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that was our top 20. That was our end of the year special. Thank you for coming on, Brandon. That was awesome. We did it.
Clit Ricketts and Dit Stickets.
Oh, some people are listening. They're like, what the hell is that?
Yep. Nugans.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with my buddy Brandon Burpee. You can find Brandon on Twitter at Brandon Burpee. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. Also, my comics adjacent newsletter called The Crossover is wrapping up its first season this week. Make sure to subscribe at bit.ly/The Crossover newsletter if you want more writing from me. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen, as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in soon for a new episode.